Here's a question we get a lot at Nomad Capitalist, and no doubt forums and message boards all over the internet are being asked the same question. What is the best place to set up offshore banking, and where should I incorporate? I'm going to answer that question in this video. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, and so this is a question that was asked as one thing. Hey, what do I do for this, and what do I do for that? And I'm going to approach this as if the person's asking for their business, because that's the area where most people get tripped up. Okay, if you have a business, you need to set up an offshore company, and you need to set up the offshore bank account to collect that company's money. You then would also like to set up a separate offshore bank account to where you can pay yourself the money from that company because you want to be separate from your company. But let's keep that separation for a future video. The issue here is, where do I set up my company's offshore banking? The answer is, as always, it depends. For me, for global entrepreneurs, if I can get a bank account in Singapore, I'm really happy with that. But the question is, what kind of business are you running? What kind of minimum deposit do you have? How much cash are you churning? The minimum deposits that a business bank in Singapore is going to request is more than what a lot of e-commerce entrepreneurs or other people who are turning over stock frequently and they need to be turning over invoices and putting their capital back out into product. It's more than what they want to often deposit. So if you have to deposit, let's say, $50,000 to open an account in Singapore and you only want to put $5,000 in, then Singapore is not going to be the best for you because their requirements are going to be too high. What kind of company do you run? What kind of products are you selling? If you're in the cryptocurrency space or something controversial, some banks just aren't going to want to deal with you. So whatever may be best for everyone may not be best for you because they simply won't work with you. Where are you a citizen of? If you're a US citizen, some banks in Singapore simply won't work with you. So there are a lot of equations that go into that. I mean, where the best places to bank offshore as a company, they're the traditional wealth hubs. It's Singapore. More expensive is going to be Switzerland or Lichtenstein. So you want to look at the established wealth havens first, and then from there you want to go down to the onshore jurisdictions. From there you want to get into the offshore jurisdictions. For my money, the best place to bank is multiple places. I want redundancies for any kind of offshore bank setup because you never know when that Singapore bank is going to close down your company's account. That's something I see quite frequently when people come to me because they didn't structure the company properly. And so the only answer I can really say besides go to the best possible jurisdiction, i.e. Singapore, is have multiple accounts. So even if you do get into Singapore, maybe also go to one of the islands. Maybe also go to one of the Puerto Rican or St. Lucian or St. Vincentian banks or a Vanuatu bank and have 2 or 3 different accounts that you're never left holding the bag. Now, here's where that factors into where you should incorporate, okay? Because the two questions were asked together. Where do I bank for my business and where do I incorporate? Here's where they connect. Okay? If you set up a company in one of the lower class, as I would call them, tax haven jurisdictions. Okay, what are these? Belize, Marshall Islands, Samoa, God forbid, the Gambia in Africa, any of those. Okay, those are not jurisdictions that are widely respected, and so people often walk into those kinds of companies because they say, "Oh, there's zero tax, there's zero reporting requirements, I can do whatever I want. That sounds fantastic. I'll just pay an annual fee, they'll leave me alone." And that's largely true. But you know what? The next level up, like a company like a BVI, they get a bit more respect. So while those lower class jurisdictions seem easy, try finding very many banks who are going to let you work with them. Okay? Try going to Singapore and saying, "I have a Belize company, will you accept me?" Now, Singaporean banks are desirable because they're stable. They're stable because they're conservative. And they're conservative because they just don't take anyone whose source of funds they don't know to potentially get them into trouble or be left holding the bag in some way. So a Singaporean bank isn't going to want to take a Belize company. It's like a supermodel saying, "You know what, I'll pass with that guy with the Doritos stain on his t-shirt." just no need for that. I have other options. I don't need the guy with the stain on his t-shirt. That's all it is. And so if you go up to the next level, like the BVIs, the more respected jurisdictions, that might be the first place that I would start, because what does the BVI do? They do a bit deeper due diligence. They require you to answer more questions to set up the company. So while I was able to set up a Belize company like that, when I set up a BVI company as an experiment, it took longer. There was a bit more involved. And so for us at Nomad Capitalists, we do that every day. We know what to do. But for the average person, they might say, oh, that's a turnoff. But what you're going to lose in the long run is respectability. And so from BVI, you go to the hybrid onshore, offshore jurisdictions like Hong Kong. Then you get to like the EU jurisdictions. As you go up the food chain, you can get more and more respect. Now, the other answer is you may want multiple companies. You may want to have a parent and a subsidiary. You may want to have a couple different companies, each performing different functions and having a transfer pricing agreement. It depends on what your company's doing. It depends on how much staff you have, if any. It depends on if you have IP. It depends on a lot of different factors, okay? But there may be a need for multiple companies. There may be a need for one company that gets you into a high quality bank, but that limits your tax exposure, okay? Because let's say you want to bank in the European Union. Yes, there are a few banks in Latvia, possibly Cyprus, possibly Malta that will take, let's say, a Hong Kong company. But it's increasingly becoming difficult. They're asking a lot of questions. They're very paranoid about that, okay? So maybe you just want to have an EU company that gets you the EU banking if that's something that you need, and then that interacts with the other company. And so then if you have two companies, well then maybe, the second company doesn't need to be a higher class jurisdiction. Maybe it can just be in the middle like BVI, okay? So these are the important factors that you have to consider. The more complicated your business is, the more complicated your plan needs to be. For a simple, just one-man show, two-man show business, I would still avoid these low-class, Seychelles, Samoa. Those have caused people a lot of problems, in my opinion. I have used them in my experience because I know what I'm doing in some cases. I use them for certain purposes, but for a general operational company, I want to at least get up to that middle range offshore jurisdiction where they're requiring something from me, where they're not giving me total privacy, total anonymity, total freedom to run wild. I know that sounds appealing, but in a world where you need to collect money, you need to be able to move that money out to your own personal bank account, I think having a certain level of respectability is important. So the answer is go as high in the food chain as you can go before you A, trigger a tax obligation, i.e., I don't want to go all the way up the food chain and start an Australian company because now that's going to cost me a lot of money in tax. And on the banking side, go as high up the food chain you can go that your company profile and your funds will allow you to go. Here's the thing though. Don't conflate the two things. Don't think that, oh, if I want a Singapore bank account, I have to set up a Singapore company. So many people do that. And then they come into Singapore and then they end up paying a lot more tax than they would need to with a traditional offshore company or an onshore offshore hybrid that might have offered them the chance to bank in Singapore if only they were willing to put a little bit more money in the account. So, these are the factors that we look at when we're putting together someone's offshore plan. I like to keep the tax very low. I like to keep the banking profile very high. And it's a matter of working at the XY coordinate to where the two meet at the perfect place. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist. I wrote this book, which you can find on Amazon, to distill a lot of the stuff we talk about in these videos and a lot of the stuff I've learned over the last decade plus traveling all around the world, teaching you about how to legally reduce your taxes, build your personal freedom, and create wealth faster. Definitely get a copy of this book if you want to learn more. Now, if you want to watch more videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and make sure you click the notifications bell so you never miss one of our new videos with more tips on how to go where you're treated best. And if you're already a 6- or 7-figure entrepreneur and you'd like to put these strategies in place for yourself, go to nomadcapitalist.com and learn about how I can help you.